watch the TV. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Happy Hour interview. I'm your host for this week, Community Manager Jared Huckaby. And if you've never seen Happy Hour before, that's our regular, currently bi-weekly live stream broadcast where we explore the various behind-the-scene elements of Star Citizen's development. For this week's show, we are in our roundtable interview format with three members of our LA ship and programming and engineering teams here to discuss the continuing work of Item System 2.0. So before we get to that, we'll introduce our esteemed guests this week. Starting immediately from my right, a man who should need no introduction, but we're going to do it anyway. Why don't you tell the folks at home who you are?
Hi folks at home, my name is Mark Abent. I'm a senior gameplay programmer here, and many of you guys might know me as the Bug Smasher.
Yes.
Yes, I love doing that tag.
Yes, I know. I know. I went to the bank once with Mark, and he introduced himself to the teller as the host of Bug Smashers. I'm like,
if it's not cringy, it's not worth it.
Right? Hey, to my left is...
Hi, I'm Kirk Tome. I'm the lead technical designer here at CIG.
All right. And to your left, someone who's never been on a Reverse the Verse or a Happy Hour. Welcome for your very first time. Tell the folks at home who you are.
Hi, I'm Chad McKinney, and I'm a gameplay programmer. I work with Mark. He has a lot of bugs that he's not smashing right now.
Delegation.
So before we get to the questions and whatnot, let's tell the folks a little bit about what you do so they know what type of questions we ask. If this is your first time watching a Happy Hour, we do take questions live from two sources. You can submit questions on our Twitch channel during the broadcast, or you can submit questions inside Spectrum, which is our own communication platform available on robertspaceindustries.com. If you are watching this on YouTube at the moment, you'll want to go to one of those two platforms to submit your questions. So Mark, for those who have never seen you before and want to know what kind of questions they can give us, tell us a little bit about what a senior gameplay engineer does.
So what is it that you do here, basically?
What is it?
What is
I'm
it
asking for me, not for them. I'm lying. I'm using this as an excuse. I have no idea what you do.
So what I do is I basically work on anything related to gameplay. That could be ships flying, ships exploding, weapons shooting, the infrastructure of the weapons, the infrastructure of games, the infrastructure of a bug. You know, if something in a turret doesn't rotate, then I'll dig in the code to see what it is. And if it's something in my system, I'll go fix it. If it's something in Chad's, I'll be like, hi, Chad, and then he'll get it. So it's anything to do with the portion of the game where the player is doing some kind of gameplay mechanic, like moving, shooting, weapon, buying, whatever, I'll be involved in it somehow.
So if somebody else says, I want the game to be able to do this, I want the player to be able to do this, and then it's your job to figure out how to actually make that happen.
Pretty much.
Kirk, you're the person who tells him what he needs to do. What does the lead designer do?
So here in LA, we're responsible for the design and implementation of ships and ship systems. So that's what kind of ships that you can purchase or acquire in the game, how they interact with each other, how they fight, how you interact with the ship, getting in and out of it, how the ship flies, what type of armament it has, what ship systems such as the power plants which supply power, how weaponry works, how things like the fuel system works, what detriments you get from damage, etc. And the designing and maintaining all the systems is a pretty interesting job.
Yeah, we have a fair number of ships in our game.
Yes, we do. And the things that we need to consider also is that when we do design these systems, they need to work across all of the different areas in the game. And so, you know, in Squadron 42, for example, any decisions we make, we have to ensure that it won't break the gameplay that they want to implement in that particular portion of the game.
All right. And Chad.
I do the same thing that Mark does. We work together.
Right,
It's maybe worth mentioning that gameplay programmers often do the kind of work that is most player-facing, as opposed to maybe like the engine programmers, which are doing things as far as like graphics or physics or kind of the lower core systems in the game. So like if it's something that you're playing with, it's probably a gameplay programmer that's doing it. But if it's something like how cool does it look, then rendering, something like that. So.
Right. Now, the reason we're sitting here today is because we have been in the midst of a conversion / upgrade to what we've called Item System 2.0. It feels like we've been talking about Item System 2.0 on Happy Hour, on Bug Smashers, on Around the Verse for quite some time now. Why don't you start us off in its basic sense? What is Item System 2.0?
Sure. So Item 2.0 has kind of been thrown around as the savior of everything.
It's going to fix everything.
It's going to fix everything.
Fix everything.
We can't do that. We'll do it Item 2.0. But what exactly is Item 2.0?
If you're asking, we're in trouble.
So Item 2.0, whenever someone just says Item 2.0, it's not literally Item 2.0. It's just the technology that brings Item 2.0, I guess, available and coming up and living. So what that will mean is, like, in our existing old stuff that we've been releasing for a while, we have these very centric gameplay logic blocks in the code, and they do their thing, and they work pretty well, but when you start wanting to use bits and pieces of that for other systems, it all falls apart, because that one big logic block is all interconnected, and you can't just grab something. If you grab something and you stick it in here, this thing might topple, or this thing might not be set up right. You end up copying and pasting. It's just a mess. Mm-hmm. So one of the very first things you have to do for Item 2.0 is we have this thing called a component system. And instead of having that big block of logic to define, a cup or a ship, we now strip away those bits of logic and we increment them in their own component. So you have a component for physics, you have a component for animation, component for certain gameplay logic, like a shield, or even a gameplay for a power plant. And now you have all these different components. You can start adding them to these, we call them entities, and you just basically define something new. And you don't need a coder to go and make a new chair. A designer like Kirk can just go into this tool we have, DataForge, plop all this stuff down, you have a new chair. Plop all this stuff down, now you have a new ship. So it's like trying to build these more complex systems that allow designers to make these bigger systems. And at the same time, when we had it in those single logical blocks, we had another thing with order. So the way that things updated was very deterministic. And we started adding all these things. We had to do one at a time on the main thread. And if you're doing like 100 of these things, it's not a problem. But when you have a big, gigantic universe where it might take a few minutes to hours to get to another planet, there's loads of items, and you might have anywhere between 10,000 or more. Now they have to go one at a time, and you end up slowing down the game because you have so many things you have to update. So one of the things in the Item 2.0 or entity component infrastructure is this thing called batch updates. So now all those individual components that we've made before can now run parallel at the same time in the frame. So instead of doing one at a time, we could do a bunch in a row, then do another bunch, then another bunch. So our update went from like something like this to something like this, but long ways now. So the more CPU cores you got, the faster the game's going to run, basically taking full charge of multi-core everything. So you have the components, you have the updates, then you have the DataForge, which is the thing that design will use, where it's our own internal data structure. So before, when we defined ships, items, or anything like that, it was all XML driven. And the problem with that is anytime we load in a ship or something, we have to open up a file. Oh, it's huge. I'm gonna keep going until you tell me not to.
No one said stop.
You have 60 seconds. Keep going.
60 seconds. Okay. So all these XMLs, you have to load it in, read it, and that is slow. So instead, we have this thing with DataForge, where we have everything offline, and we export it in one binary blob, and we load that, and we can chunk everything that we need and take only the bits that we need fast. Then there's a billion other systems that come into play, and the interaction system.
There's not more than 100 million.
The thing is,
literally, figuratively.
literally, there is a bunch of stuff. The Item 2.0 system itself uses all that technology and does a little bit more, where now you have this thing that designates who could control what. Then you have the item logics that talk to that, that talk to who could dictate what control and who should get what and who can observe. That's the item infrastructure. Well, everything underneath that is like the entity level substructure, which the item 2.0 uses. There's a lot. I could talk for hours.
Well, I think Mark did a great job of describing like the underlying systems and how the engine will improve.
Yes.
And we'll get performance increases from that. While we're doing this conversion, however, and this does involve that we do convert all of our existing items and systems to this item 2.0 infrastructure. We're also improving those items and their functionality. So we're improving the ways that you interact with chips to get into them. And while you're in the cockpit, how you interact with the cockpit. And how things like power plants and coolers and shield generators and quantum drives and weapons and thrusters will work, which allows design to balance them better. I think there's a little bit of Wild West systems when we were trying to balance things like power consumption, heat generation, EM and IR, and how those systems were utilized in the old 1.0 system. We greatly simplified the way that we generate and manage those signals, and how the player can figure out, okay, well, this is the amount of power I will need for all of these items that we have on our ship. I will be underpowered, so how do I improve that? Well, I can get a better power plant, or manage my power more efficiently, or pick like maybe weapons that don't consume as much, so that I can make better gameplay choices for the ship loadout, and it'll allow you to affect gameplay directly by being able to control the parameters of those items.
Now we'll talk a little bit about the upcoming changes to the component system and everything that accompany Item 2.0 in a minute.
Cool.
But one of the most common questions that we get with all this talk about System 2.0 is, why didn't we just make Item System 2.0 the first time? Why wasn't
It's a great idea.
Why wasn't this where we started?
I wasn't here yet, so.
Yeah, well, we weren't here. We didn't have to-
Exactly.
I wasn't either.
Yeah, so if they hired me in the first place, we just would have had Item 2.0.
No, I mean, it's very, iteration is one of the touchstones of all game development. You never start making the final version of anything when you start. Tell us a little bit more about why what we were doing with Item System 1.0, and why, maybe a little bit about why this is the time to upgrade to Item 2.0.
Sure. Well, I mean, CryEngine originally didn't have an entity component system in it. So we get this engine, it has a lot of behavior that's in it. We're trying to make a game. We have a certain scope for that game. There's a certain amount of employees. It's much smaller than what we have now. And so we're focused on making vehicles, making ships, making all this behavior that we need. But as we make this game, we push out releases. The team looks and says, this doesn't scale, right? We need to get much bigger. So how do we scale? Well, a big thing that's been happening with engine tech is these entity component systems. And it's a good idea, I think, for lots of reasons. It's a good idea for engine performance, but it's also a good idea for design. It's a good idea for code maintenance. So it's just a really good idea. And so our engine team looked at the code base and said, can we make this better? Yes, we can, and started working on it. But it's a really big change to the entity system. It's a big change to gameplay systems. It's a big change for the designers. So it takes a long time, but it's absolutely the right approach, and it's where we need to go. So
it's something we always knew we were going to have to do, even from the beginning. It's just when you're starting the project, and you've got 10 people in a studio, and maybe another 10 in another studio, and that's where you're starting. That's not the time. There's not enough resources to start on a project of this scale.
Oh, yes.
So we had to scale, and then we could scale.
Well, at the same time as when we were first starting off, we had to start getting something into a point and start building stuff out, because we didn't know what we needed.
You have to start somewhere.
We had to start somewhere. So we start on some systems, see how it goes. You learn from that stuff, see what you actually need. That might work for like this one thing or this thing, and you realize, oh, you have these other things. Now you have to figure out a system that will work with all of them. So that initial thing kind of helped us go, okay, we were able to get the stuff to a point where we could sort of prototype it. Now we need to get the actual finalized design and spec and engine and everything that will allow us to take this beyond and actually iterate upon.
Right, and speaking of scale, then, like, I think the componentization of these various systems is useful in that we can take the same systems, and so instead of like, when we'll have space stations or bases on planets. Instead of making bespoke power systems for that, we'll utilize the same exact system for handling power on that base. And ultimately, we should be able to take a ship power plant, plop it into the power pipes for that base, and it should behave in the way that we expect it to.
And so when players learn how to manage the components of their ships, they'll be able to apply that information possibly towards the repair and maintenance of a space station.
Right.
Yes.
And so
As far as the component system and the gameplay goes, they're exactly the same, actually.
So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about that. I want to take one more question. I want to take one question from the fans. Remember, guys, you can submit your questions to us on Twitch or Spectrum. Please preface your question with the word "question" in capital letters and brackets. It's going to help. Poor Tyler Nolan pick your questions out from the detritus of all the other conversation. A question, I literally have it here 4 times, so I'm going to assume it's very important. It says, will Item System 2.0 finally allow us to lock up our spaceships?
It does allow for it. So I own the interaction system, and one thing that added into the interaction system was interaction locking and interaction authorization. So it means that 2 people can look at the same interaction, and depending on some context, they will either have access to the interaction or not. Now, we need a security system to now be built on top of that to say, when is the time that you can and can't use it? And we have work that's being done towards that, design that's being done towards that as far as like securitization tokens and things like that. So yes, it will allow for it. I'm not sure if we're going to get quite there for 3.0.
It's not a 3.0.
Okay, it's not a 3.0 thing, but it is something that is going to happen, yes.
And that same technology that he was mentioning is the thing we're now using on their ships. So like we have the Super Hornet, which is a 2-seater ship. And I'm pretty sure everyone knows if you try to get into that thing and then have another guy into and both people T-pose and it just goes ballistic. With the interaction system, we now could have the prompt come up saying enter pilot, enter co-pilot. And when someone's entering the other one, it basically blocks the other person from entering until he's done, then he could get in. And that ensures it works across all machines, so we won't have that funky, weird T-pose issue. And once the security or other systems come in, we could just plug it in and it prevents you from actually interacting.
Right, and programming is allowing design to actually set up those rules so that we can avoid situations like that.
Yeah. One of the things you mentioned in the ATV segment, you brought up the T-pose thing, was the Connie turrets. And how when somebody's in the top one, when you go up, the intelligent, the state machine for the turrets will basically give you the prompts for raising and lowering the bottom turret, but not the top turret, so there's no more conflicts.
That's the same exact thing that we're using for the Hornet. We have this new technology now that allows designers to set up states for a subset of seats. So like the Constellation turret, we have the one on the top and one on the bottom. Designers can now set a state machine, so if you have one on the top coming down, the bottom one can't be used until that one comes up.
So the days of 2 people trying to hit the ladder at the Connie at the same time and one of them getting stuck in a T-pose, those are soon.
They're soon to be gone.
It's too bad T-pose is my favorite hip hop artist.
Oh, jeez.
This will also fix a bug in which you won't be able to enter the turrets from outside of the ship.
Yes, it does fix that.
That's how I sneak on people's ships, though. When I
Well,
jump in,
we're
that's how I sneak
talking
on
about security.
So one of the other things that, well, Item System 2.0 does a lot for our game. It's going to enable a lot of gameplay for stuff. But one of the most pressing features, I guess, one of the things that we've talked about, we've been waiting for, is the update to the ship stats and the items. Folks who have followed the project for some time know that our website as it is right now doesn't currently reflect the Item System 2.0 components as we've split things off into secondary thrusters and all this other stuff. There is a revamp on our website in progress right now that you're working very closely with our friends at Turbulent on, as far as that. JJ, if we can bring up the image here. This is a sneak peek at the upcoming new ship stats module that will be available for every ship on our game. You can see quite a few changes into the things. You'll see the difference between main thrusters and maneuvering thrusters. You'll see spots for fuel intakes, fuel intakes and fuel tanks, a bespoke section for quantum drives, utility items, basically a much more modular setup for ships. This will eventually lead to a greater customization of our ships. What can you tell us a little bit about your work on that, Kirk?
Well, the main thing we wanted to accomplish was to not only make it a little easier to figure out what items came on ships that you were getting by default in a really simple visual way, but ensure that that information was accurate. The stats on the page weren't always up to date, and so this update provides not only better visibility on exactly which items you'll get by default, but what the current default items for the ships are. And whenever we do a release, we will ensure that the website is up to date, so players know exactly what they're getting.
Gotcha. One of the things that's commonly overlooked is that when we're selling, when we sell a ship as a pledge to support the development of the game, they don't come with the best items that you can equip on the ship. They're quite literally stock items. We encountered this recently with the Eclipse sale, where we introduced stealth items for the first time on a scale of A to, what was it, E or A to D?
It should be A to D.
A to D. Some of the items one of the items was B, but most of the items were C, and that's to leave an upgrade path.
Yeah, we want the players to be able to experience the joy of making the ship better. And so you'll be able to acquire better items, place them on your ships, and then experience better performance.
Gotcha. So with Item System 2.0 will come the ability to essentially trick out your ship. There are plenty of people, and I've experienced this, and my dad has experienced this, and he texts me about it quite often. Hi, Dad. Is that you see a ship, it's like, oh, I love the look of the ship, and then you get in your flight, it's like, but it doesn't quite handle the way that I wanted to. You get kind of let down. Because with this, within confines, so you can't make it do anything, but you'll be able to customize the ship. So maybe if the stock loadout of the ship doesn't quite play the way that you want it, you'll be able to adjust the shields and the engines and the coolers and not just the weapons and maybe make that ship that wasn't quite your cup of tea when you bought it closer to something that you're like, oh, now it's fulfilling the dream that I had for this ship.
Right.
That's an exciting prospect.
I think players have always experienced thus far how interesting it is to customize the weapons. I mean, that's the one thing that you have full control over, and it's awesome. We didn't have quite the visibility on the customization for things like the power plants or the coolers or the shields. They were a little bit, they were kind of obscured in what the upgrade path was. As we're tying these systems closer together and again simplifying the usage of power and heat generation and what that does to your shields, I think it'll be more interesting to figure out, okay, if I do get a better power plant, I will experience these enhanced features. There'll be some detriments too, like you'll generate more heat. So you'll have to increase your cooler capacity to ensure that you won't overheat all the time. But in stock format, maybe if you are using all your weapons and thrusting at 100% and you're taking damage from your shield, so your shield generators have to maintain your shields, you may run out of power. And so you have to make a decision. Okay, well, I have to cut power to my weapons right now so that I'll be able to escape from this particular battle and have enough shields. And then when your shields regenerate, turn your weapons back on, and now you're ready to enter the fight again.
It's exciting to me to think that when you're in the PU and you see a Saber or you see a Gladius, right now you pretty much know what to expect when you see that ship because everything is stock and default. Soon the time will come that when you see a Constellation out there, it's like, well, okay, how is it kitted out? What kind of aftermarket components does it have? What kind of crew does it have, and how effective? You're not necessarily going to know exactly what to expect from one Connie to the next, and that's an exciting prospect. There's a little more danger to your encounters.
Sure.
Just to go on to that, one of the biggest things that we had problems with early on with their ships in the current, they were mostly decked out to handle single-seater fighters. When you had more seats, there were issues with control and who got what. I was talking about that a little bit on the segment the other day. So when we were doing this Item 2.0 infrastructure, we wanted to do a pass on control and how that all works out so that when you're in like one of those bigger ships and you're a pilot, you don't maybe have control of the weapons. You could fly, maybe turn on power. You'll need someone else to go sit in the seat next to you to actually go and shoot. So if you see that Constellation or a Retaliator out there, and he's just by himself and he's just hanging there, maybe you can go up and battle him because there's only one person in there, and all he could do is fly, maybe run in the back, go in the turret, then you go behind him, you could play cat and mouse with them.
Now that's not to say every Connie. That's if he happens to have his Connie
yes.
kitted out that way.
Yeah.
You know, there will absolutely be people who kit their ships out, let's say poorly. I'm not naming any names, Jared Huckaby. But to go along with your question, what you just said, another question from the chat here. Item System 2.0 will allow us special interaction with ship systems. Will we be able to click buttons on our ship to work those systems? Also, which I think the answer is yes, but will there also be keyboard shortcuts to those systems as well?
Yes and no. I mean, we'll maintain our current keyboard shortcuts for those. We'll implement the ones that I think we'll need quick access to, but for the most part, all the interactions are going to go through our MFDs. So you will throttle power that are coming out from the power plant to your various systems through an MFD. You'll control how much the shields are asking for power through an MFD for shields. And you'll flip through those various pages, and then you'll control how those systems function via those MFD interactions.
Which should give, I think, more gameplay for multi-crew ships, because it means that if you have more hands available, you can get more fine-grained with the adjustments that you're making.
And that one person can be dedicated to a particular set of tasks.
And with the whole rebalancing of, now that we're splitting all these components up and we have design going through and figuring out how power and heat's supposed to work with these things, we have a better understanding of the whole system and how they all work, so that these MFDs that we have, they're actually going through an art pass to display that information in a much more crisp, clear manner. So you know what's overheating, you know why you have no power. So that was one of the issues we had before. You have this MFD, it's showing you stuff, but you don't know what that means.
What an incredibly good segue to my next question. We talked about how Item System 1.0 was great for single-player ships, but not so great for multi-crew ships. What are some of the gameplay elements that Item System 2.0 gives us for multi-crew? Like, we've had multi-crew ships in our game for quite some time, but people haven't really seen what multi-crew gameplay is supposed to be yet. Let's talk a little bit about what it's going to be like to manage the shields on a multi-crew ship, how that kind of gameplay might work, what it's going to be like to manage engines and power and cool. What are we thinking that gameplay is going to be like?
Well, in the past, I think the most control we had for things like shields was turning them off and on. Not super fun. So because we'll be able to throttle how much the shield generators are requesting as far as power, so that you can reserve power for the rest of the systems on the ship, you need to monitor that MFD pretty closely. That's rather difficult to do when you're also trying to fly the ship and not die. And so if we can dedicate like a co-pilot or an engineer or whoever is sitting in another seat to be the shield guy, he or she can monitor the MFD for shields and then decide, okay, here's where we need to divert power to shields, or divert power away from shields, or do things like do a particular face prioritization, and do all those rather kind of fiddly adjustments to the shields, so that it'll ensure that your survivability in the battle is much greater. And because it's something that does require more concentration than the pilot is perhaps allowed during a firefight, that's where the advantages of multi-crew, I think, will be seen.
Okay. Now, understanding that these systems are all still in development and in design, for shield gameplay, when you say managing power, is there anything more you can tell us about? If I'm the shield person on this Idris or whatever, my job is in charge of the shields. Am I doing more than just adjusting power?
So yeah, we'll have the functionality that we had in the past that I think wasn't super visible, like doing the shield face prioritization. So if you have a 6-face shield, now you can decide, okay, I'm getting hit from above. Well, I better give the top face some higher priority, because I'll be able to absorb more damage. At the same time, if you're running out of power because you don't have enough to supply all the systems, and therefore you're not able to thrust out of that battle area, you can decide to, okay, we're going to temporarily reduce or turn off the shields so that I can have more reserve power for the other systems. Or conversely, you can request more power and say, we really, really need shields to survive this particular encounter.
Okay. And since we have multiple shield generators and stuff, as those components are getting damaged, you're going to have people who are swapping out those, swapping out the damaged components for the new components. There's going to be a lot to do to provide survivability to these ships.
So soon we'll be able to actually do the swapping out and customization.
Soon TM.
We'll be able to do that on the loadout screen. So not in the middle of a battle or while you're not at a place where you can swap them out. I think in the near future we'll be able to actually do them on the fly.
Yes.
So that'd be great.
We've been actively working on that. Thanks.
Yeah, I was extrapolating down. It's because one of the more common criticisms of multi-group gameplay in the game that it is right now is you go to do an ICC mission. If you've got 4 people on a Connie, you're getting 4 times the number of mobs, but you've still got the one ship. The Connie doesn't represent itself as well as 4 sabers.
Right. Yes.
But item 2.0 is the first step towards balancing that out.
Oh yeah.
I mean, one of those balances is like in the old system, you had a bunch of items, and then the HUD and other systems tried to figure out how they could talk to who, and it was kind of a mess. So when we went to item 2.0, we said, we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to do something different. We have these things now called controllers, and we have these things that are the items. The controllers are basically the interface, how the player will communicate to the items on his ship. So if you want to adjust the power, you have to gain control of this energy controller. And that energy controller will talk to the individual power plants to make sure they're doing what they need to do. So what that means is the guy in the turret, he could observe the energy controller to see the status of everything. And then if Kirk's in the pilot seat and he has that energy controller, he could do and change stuff dynamically, and the guy in the turret could see what's happening. So you could have a guy in the shield station who's monitoring what power's doing because someone else is doing it while he's messing with the stuff. So you'll be able to now see what you're doing when you have these multi-crew segments.
Right. And then speaking of future, when we get to maybe getting systems like repair finalized, you'll be able to monitor and then choose how to repair things. Hopefully, the best solution would be is you can physically go to where that section is in the ship, rip out the damaged or malfunctioning shield generator, pop another one in there, and then you're good to go.
It's a good time to plug that those components will be completed by the UK props team, who are our guests on Tuesday's Subscribers Town Hall next Tuesday, June 7th. So tune back in for more information about that on June 7th. Okay, more questions from the chat. Will we see the return of an in-depth power system management? Yes. Let's see. We see you will be able to click buttons in your ship and work those systems. Oh, that's the same question again. It's just multiple times in here. Will all ships be converted to item system 2.0 and patch 3.0, or just a select few?
It's all or nothing.
Yep.
It has to be. The gameplay systems we're writing simply require it. So, yes.
That's why it's a pretty big endeavor for all of us.
How many ships do we have?
150.
It was some
Well, with variations, and yes.
Publicly announced we have 93.
Okay.
Publicly announced we have 93.
No.
I was expecting you to say, I don't know, and then I was like, aha, I do.
We have 94 now because we did the space whale. You want to fly that?
Too soon.
Here's a question about voice communication. Will you be adding voice communication in the game? Will it be possible to control things in game by voice when exiting the ship? I'm going to go ahead and say it's way too soon to know that. Turbulent is in the process of developing our VoIP system at the moment, so they're still in the experimental stage where they're trying out new and different things. So
whenever I see that system implemented in the game, I just see people yelling, like gradually getting louder and louder and yelling the same thing at the screen.
Yes.
And you hit tab and hit mute.
Yes. My father, my octogenarian father who plays the game, my dad, he has discovered voice attack recently, so he is talking to the game.
Nice.
Here's a question. It's actually not a question. It says, Chad, I like your shirt.
Thank you. We're sure gonna.
What percentage has been converted to Item System 2.0 so far?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ooh.
Well, all the ships, I think, they're in various stages of completion. Whenever we get one of the systems converted over, we, in tech design, immediately go and start converting those elements for all the ships that we have to work with.
This reminds me of the time I came by your desk and you were in the inside of the Mustang Beta, looking at all the different drawers that had to have Item System 2.0 interaction systems. And literally, I've never seen you look this distressed with as many drawers. You're just like, I can't believe there are this many drawers and cupboards.
They're very important.
They all got to open.
And all,
Gotta be able to open all of them.
and all the bathrooms.
Yes.
The super important bathrooms.
Yeah, and now the designers are being frantic with this room system that's coming in atmospheres and all that.
I think we should talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about the room system, because we've had that term thrown around for a while.
Yes.
And it's actually a very commonly misunderstood phrase, because when it was first introduced, 3 years ago, it was used as add-ons for the hangar.
Yep.
Like the hangar will have a firing range, but that's not what the room system is anymore.
No.
What is the room system?
The room system is a generic way for designers to lay out volumes to describe areas that are associated with rooms that will have certain gameplay associated with them. The first kind of system that we're introducing into that is atmospheres. So we have these rooms that they lay out. It'll be in a ship or on a space station or on a planet, whatever. They lay out this room system, which is all of these rooms with room connections, and then we describe, okay, what is the gas composition of these particular rooms in their atmospheres? What pressure are they at? And then whenever you open a door or an airlock, we start letting flow change dynamically the pressures between the different rooms, and they'll start mixing their compositions, and people start dying inevitably. So basically, the room system is a way for us to consolidate markup for the designers for several gameplay systems, which would be atmosphere, security, power distribution for kind of like stations and stuff. Other things that we're still thinking of right now. But yeah, originally it was more of like a procedural thing as far as the hangar. We still plan on doing that. It's just a different system, or at least differently named system that will do that. Yes.
Yeah, right now we're focused. We get asked a lot of questions about the hangar. When will this happen? Right now, our focus is on the PU as opposed to the place where you store your ships. Yes. There's only so many resources. Even though we are up to near 400 people, in the company, there's still finite resources. They can only work on so many things at a time. And right now, the persisting universe in Squadron 42 is more important than adding a room in your hangar.
There was some work done on the hangar. It did use this old technology called prefabs. The problem with that is you had to load all or nothing. And since we want streaming, we couldn't use that system. So we actually had another programmer named Ariel. He moved them all to this thing called an object container. And it's basically like a mini level that we stream in and out. So that's kind of the first step toward making an expandable hangar.
Yes.
So there's like work here and there doing in different systems. It's all coming together.
What I like about the Chad's room system, though, is that it's not a hacked system in which we're just using little triggers to determine whether you die or not.
Yes.
You should explain to the backers the fun bug that you saw in your mode.
One of my favorite bugs is whenever I was working on the room system and working on these atmosphere containers and stuff and adding new features that the designers were adding. Also, there's this guy, Nicky, in Germany, who's working on the stamina component for the player. So it's kind of two halves of this behavior. We have the environment behavior that defines all the atmosphere and the atmospheric flow and mixture and composition, all this stuff. But then you need something to care about that, right? So now we have this stamina component, which cares that there's enough oxygen in the environment, or maybe I'll start suffocating and dying. And so he was getting that starting to work, and working with the audio and effects people to start getting suffocation working. But there was a bug in his code where it worked even whenever you were in editing mode while in the editor. So you'd be doing anything like messing with a vehicle or changing anything in the game at all, and you would start suffocating because you weren't in a room with an atmosphere. So you'd have to move inside while you were editing to catch a breath before you could go back outside and edit some more, or you would die.
What's good for the
We should have kept
good
it.
for the gander. Yeah, it would have worked like a self-imposed timer on death time.
it sounds
It's
like
like you have to go, you have to fix it.
It sounds like wearing a scuba diving outfit,
Right.
and you kind of have to like keep taking gulps of air.
Yes.
to
It's
be working.
funny because I just at my desk and I just hear Chad just laughing hysterically. I walk over that he's going in and out and just laughing like a little kid. I'm like, this is great.
So you mentioned the two parts, the environment and the stamina. So
Yes.
so the stamina, we've talked about it quite a few times on ATB, and it's still in development, and hopefully we'll see the first iterations of that in 3.0.
Yep.
So it's not so your character's ability to perform won't just be based on what he's capable of. It'll also take into effect the atmosphere that they're in.
Yes.
So you might be able to sprint longer in one environment than you would be in another one.
Yes. You have an oxygenation level for your blood, and that affects your stamina. So if the oxygen in the environment is actually like a lower percentage than it normally should be, you will be affected by that.
Why would we do that?
Because this is Star Citizen.
I know. I'm legitimately hearing about this for the very first time here. I'm like, we really do just drill down into everything. don't we?
Yes.
Well, if you think about it, you're in a fighter and you want to go take that retaliator, you got to make sure you have a helmet on before you go into that area, or you're going to pop open the thing and start suffocating.
Yes. So now conceivably, when you're attacking a larger ship, it's not just about take their shields down. Maybe it's take their life support
Yes,
down.
yes.
And maybe you kill a couple people who weren't properly suited up just by taking the life support.
You can take the
system
life
down.
support down. You can make it at least malfunction, and maybe it scrubs the CO2 out of the atmosphere less well, and then eventually the CO2 builds up and everybody passes out. Or you just completely take it out and they breathe it all up, and you open the airlock and they get vented out in space.
Not to continue with theory crafting, or you have a spy aboard the ship and he takes it and poisons the atmosphere inside.
Yes,
And
yes.
kills all the crew inside.
It supports any number of gas compositions that the designers want to come up with. So that it's not just oxygen, it's any gases.
Star Citizen.
Yes.
We got gas.
Also, like that it's systemic because we can avoid bugs like not dying because you're dancing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a joke about that. Never mind. Okay, let's see. What else do we got from the viewers? Are the incompatibilities planned between item 2.0? Are there incompatibilities planned between item 2.0 components? For example, Vandal and human tech items and stuff. Will you be able to take components out of a Vandal scythe or a glaive and put them into a Super Hornet? Are there going to be incompatibilities?
I think for our first go at this, we won't have those restrictions quite there yet. But as we start balancing them and figuring out where the best places that each of the items should live in, we'll figure out where those restrictions need to occur.
What's appropriate,
Yeah.
what's not?
And then if we need to make bespoke items for ship types.
Yeah, I mean the recent Banner Defender is a good example of this. It's got Tabaran shield generators. It's got Xi'an engines. It's and the power plant was from, I can't remember what the third race, but it's got technology from 3 different races in it. So to some extent there will be some interoperability, but yeah, there will probably have to be some, for balance reasons, there'll be some captured Vandal ship and it's like, okay, no, you can't take the components out of that one.
Right. We'll need to play with the system first and
Yeah,
figure out exactly where we're at.
It's one of the exciting parts of having a live environment in the middle of game development. You're going to see things as they iterate. What you see today will not. And this is a good rule of thumb for all of Star Citizen. What you see today isn't what you saw yesterday. It's not going to be what you see tomorrow. We are continuously iterating because that's what we're doing here. We're making a game.
You
A
can
very
pretty much
big
think
game.
of 3.0 as building the new infrastructure.
Yes.
Where apparently we track the oxygenation of your blood.
That's right.
Why not?
Okay. Will replacing a damaged shield generator take that segment's shield down, or is there built-in redundancy? That would depend on the ship.
Right, and also, again, since we're not doing live replacements at the moment,
In the first,
we'll get to that. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
yeah,
But yeah.
gotcha. Yeah. Cool. Would Item System 2.0 allow a dedicated tablet app to function as a full external MFD?
I've not heard of anything along those lines.
Yeah.
Not saying it's not possible, but
It's just not something we're working on right
I'm
now.
not aware of anybody working on that.
I suppose we could transfer MFD functionality to mobiGlass at some point, but
With the right API.
Right. I mean, it is all, the UI is Flash at least, so there's a potential there, but no promises at all.
I mean, with the whole new controller manager, it was designed that you could have anything register a user and say, here's his priorities. Because we're using that for the AI module, we're using that for the man turrets, we're using that for the flight, I forgot, like air traffic controller, we're using that for all sorts of things. So we could have mobiGlass register the person who has these priorities and can dictate stuff. But we also have to make sure that works the same in multiplayer.
right.
So the system allows it, the API. We just have to utilize it.
So when are you going to be done?
Yeah, well, we need to get to step 1 first. Yeah.
I heard that you were working on that.
Don't you know about
Okay, he's not working on it.
Views and opinions expressed by Chad McKinney do not represent those of Firebrand Games, Robert Space Industries, or its subsidiaries.
Don't you know, once we're done with 2.0, we have to do 3.0? Yeah.
Okay, let's see. We're almost out of time. Let me see if I can find one or two more before we... In atmospheres, will we be able to bleed helium into a room instead of nitrogen? And will the players' voices change
That's
with it?
hilarious.
Helium into the room? Certainly. Voice changing? I'm not working on that. So
It's a good idea.
something
It's
for
a
the
good
audio guys.
It's a good idea, Star Citizen. Get back to us. We'll get back to that a couple steps down the line.
That sounds like a fun R&D project.
We'll have the Aegis balloon.
I like the question, though. Good idea. Good thinking. All right. Let's see. Will you be able to hot swap components like power plants? We just covered that. Not in the first version. In item 2.0, how will stackable or variable quantity items be handled?
So that is actually
know
getting
right now.
taken care of by other Chad Zamzow.
Yep.
I'm not sure how much we could say on it, but he is working on a system that will stack things. I don't know too much on it other than I see it on a screen once in a while.
Yeah, he's working on a system in which we can stack cargo items in
Yeah.
the cargo areas.
Chad Zamzow.
Something.
Got the second coolest name in all of CIG.
Who's first coolest?
Johnny Gisavius. Johnny Gisavius is a pretty rad
pretty
name.
good.
That is
Johnny
pretty good.
Gisavius is a pretty rad. Johnny Gisavius has the coolest name, then Chad Zamzow has the second coolest. Okay. With that, actually, we are out of time. It's a good point to end. Is there anything else you want to add? You want to tell folks about Item System 2.0 and its continuing work? Anything you want to get out there?
It's a lot of work, and we're chugging through it and trying to get to to a nice polished state as quickly as possible.
What you got? Come on, you were all talking before.
I need more coffee.
I guess I would just say that for 3.0, it's not an arrival point, it's a beginning, right, for all this new tech. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a lot of new stuff there, but there's a lot of iteration and new stuff that's going to come in after.
Yeah, you make a good point. It's important to remember that 3.0, the entire 3.x line is where the building blocks of Star Citizen come online. 3.0 is not here's everything that we're doing. It is the first step, and then 3.1, and then 3.2, and 3.2, and that applies to Item System 2.0. It's the first implementations of this as far as ships go, and then it will continue to iterate in 3.1 and 3.2 and 3.3. So.
New toolbox of goodies.
Okay. So with that, a couple of final housekeeping tips. Tuesday is our subscribers town hall right back here on twitch.tv/StarCitizen. We'll be talking with members of the UK props team. They are the guys who make all of the ship components that will be going into these ships, along with all manner of other things. If you're a subscriber, we are collecting questions for that Q&A ahead of time in the subscribers den on Spectrum. You can find that thread pinned to the top there. Of course, ATV is on Thursday. And yeah, there will no happy hour next week. We are still on our bi-weekly schedule as we continue to work on revamps to our website, things like that, ship stats page and stuff like that. So for happy hour interview with the LA ship programming engineering peoples, I'm Jared. That's Kirk. That's Chad. That's Mark. And we'll see you in 2 weeks, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.